Many years after the flood, God called Abraham to be the father of a very large nation, through whom all peoples of the earth would receive a special spiritual blessing. In Genesis chapter 11, at the end of the chapter, we read what happened with Abram, who is Abraham. God renamed Abram Abraham, in case you're confused at all. But verse 31 says, "And Terah took his son Abram and his grandson Lot, the son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarah, his son Abram's wife, and they went out with them from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to the land of Canaan. And they came to Haran and dwelt there." And so we have a map here that shows what happened. Abram and his father Terah were from Ur of Chaldea, and the promised land to Abraham is Canaan right here. But this is called the Fertile Crescent. Got a couple rivers here and great grass and stuff for their livestock, because they had a lot of livestock. So they went up here to Haran, and then later on they would enter into Canaan. And so then Terah dies, Abraham's father. Chapter 12 says, "Now the Lord had said to Abram, 'Get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house, to a land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you. And in you all the families of the earth will be blessed.'" So Abraham is given a special promise here, and it's very important, especially to the Jews, because Abraham is the father of the Jews. It's considered their father, and God had promised land to Abraham. There's the promised land. Then he promised that he would bless those that blessed him and curse those who cursed him. And so basically God wanted to use Abraham for others to see that who the true and living God is. The last part of verse 3 is pretty interesting. It says, "And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." All the families of the earth. That's a pretty big statement there. What exactly does that mean? Well, we're going to have to wait to see how the full story of the Bible folds out to see the answer. But then we look in Genesis 12 again, verses 4 through 7. And Abraham is 75 years old when his father dies, and God gives him the promise. Then he goes, he starts to head out towards the promised land. But there were people living in the land, Canaanites, and so that was a problem. But when he gets there with his wife and his nephew Lot, God makes another promise, and he says, "To your descendants I will give this land." So God said that he was going to give the promised land to Abraham's descendants. God tested Abraham's faith by asking him to sacrifice Isaac, his son, through whom the spiritual blessing would come. But at the last moment, God provided a substitute sacrifice. I really suggest you read Genesis 22, 1 through 18, if you haven't read that, but it gives the story here. There's two obvious questions from the story. Why did God ask Abraham to sacrifice his son? And two, why did Abraham obey such a weird sacrifice? Well, first of all, God knew what Abraham would do, and he was testing his faith. And Abraham obeyed because he knew that God had promised to bless him through his descendants, and Isaac was his descendant, and so he knew that God would fulfill his promise. And so whether he sacrificed Isaac and God raised him back from the dead, or God somehow stopped him from doing that. He knew that God's promises would be fulfilled. In verse 5 we see that Abraham told his servants that to stay there, my son and I are going up and we will return. So we see there that Abraham knew somehow that he and his son would return. And his faith was confirmed in the end of the chapter when we see what happens when God stops him from sacrificing his son, and then God provides us a substitute sacrifice. And it's very interesting to see here how God did provide a substitute sacrifice, because often in the Bible we'll see that God uses an innocent animal as a sacrifice and in place of us and our death because of our sins. In verse 18, God again gives Abraham a blessing, and he says, through your seed. And so God told Abraham that he would bless his descendants. And that's a little different than Genesis 12:3 in the last lesson, where he said he would bless Abraham. Later on, Isaac had a son. He had two sons, Jacob and Esau. Jacob means deceiver, and after a few deceiving things Jacob did, he wrestled with God, and God changed his name to Israel, which means Prince of God. And Israel had 12 sons, and they are the 12 tribes of Israel. And God, at the end of Israel's life, in Genesis 49, verse 10, he's blessing his sons, and he says to Judah that the scepter will not depart from him, which the scepter is an emblem or a sign of royal authority, and he's saying one of your descendants, Judah, will hold the scepter, will be a king, and will reign for everyone. So that's interesting to note. What descendant of Judah will come out who will reign